Hello and welcome to More Than a Game, a podcast about the A-Leagues, Premier League, Socceroos and more. This week on the show, AFL fans scoff at pitch invasions in Football World Cup qualifiers. Assistant referee unsheaths himself mid-match at an A-League game. Hasta Vista will only be saying goodbye to the Roos, baby. My name's Tommie, and joining me this week, it's Colby, just the two of us this week. Nice little romantic duo for the pod, for your listening pleasure. Colby, how you feeling, mate?
Mate, happy to be here. Happy to be talking football, but I looked at the run sheet and sort of the Socceroos chat. Obviously, we've had the Saudi Arabia game this morning, time of recording that we'll talk about. But yeah, and just all those feelings came back to me about how I feel about the Roos at the moment, and we'll get into a bit more Roos chat later. But yeah, suffice to say, feeling pretty grim.
Well, mate, shall we crack on to maybe some good stuff then? Something to warm the cockles a little bit. What's your moment of the week? What did you like this week then?
Got a few. I liked a bit. None of it was Socceroos related.
Nothing
but
Australia related.
One of my moments of the week was World Cup related. And nice. It's Canada who qualified top of their group and qualified for their first World Cup in 36 years. Love that for them. And their coach as well, John Herdman, became the first manager to qualify the women's and the men's teams. Just like huge moment for Canada. Like the soundbite from him was that we've got Alphonso Davies winning the Champions League. We've got players playing all over Europe. We've got kids coming through the system, and we've qualified for a World Cup. Canada is legit football country. And I feel like, I mean, even my moments of the week are turning a bit grim, but I feel like this is where the Socceroos were in 2006, and it's just been downhill for us ever since then. And it's where we should have been progressing past there, but we haven't. But I mean, I'm really stoked for Canada that they're gonna. I mean, because of course they'll be there in the following World Cup in 2026 when North America host it. But it's great for them to qualify for one top. They're absolutely flying at the moment. To get there after so long, like Canada, like Australia, football's not the number one sport there. All the kids would have been told, if you want to be sporty, you play hockey or learn how to skate or something. If not, go and work in an office. But for these kids and for this team, they've all got something to pin their hopes to now.
Yeah, nice. And look, I guess the Canadian manager, he does have his critics, though. I know some people have been calling him a bit of a clown, saying that he juggles too much. But yeah, that's all I got. But yeah, mate, nice. It is a nice story that the Canadians are doing well at the moment. Like you say, not a team that's traditionally done well over the last couple of years, but women are flying, men are doing well too. So I'd love to see it. For me, though, another underdog story, North Macedonia beating Italy. I got a couple this week, so I'll try and lift the vibe a little bit. North Macedonia then beating Italy, it was one of those moments where you thought, nah, they can't do it. The longer the game went on, you thought, well, maybe they can jag this. And then obviously they got the goal deep into injury time and, broke Italian hearts. And probably a lot of Australian fans were just quietly a little bit happy about it as well after 2006.
I'm just feeling like that dominoes, the dominoes meme, where it's like the really small domino round to the really big one. I just feel like the first one was like Grosso diving and Italy missing 2 World Cups in a row. That's karma, guys.
It's a pretty weird scenario that they're the European champions, yet they've lost the last 2. They've missed the last 2 World Cups.
It just shows how hard it is to qualify in Europe, doesn't it? That's exactly really what it is. I mean, I know North Macedonia aren't powerhouses, but they're obviously in that position.
Put some respect on Goran Pandev's name.
They're obviously, Italy were obviously in that position for it all to be coming down to that game because of how tough qualification is there. So true. I think that's what it really speaks to.
True that. I got another couple of quick ones though. I wanted to shout out to the assistant referee at the MacArthur versus Melbourne City game at Campbelltown this weekend. The flag came off of his stick, and so he just had a handle. And what I learned from that game was that the assistant referee's flags, they have like a little radio transmitter in them, and that's how I think maybe there's a button in it which sort of maybe alerts the referee that, hey, the assistant's like trying to get your attention. Hey mate, he's got his flag up, which I thought that was kind of cool. It was kind of interesting.
That's smart. TIL.
Yeah, no, mate. Yeah, exactly right. And the other one I wanted to shout out was Stefan Mork. I think he was someone's own goal.
Speaking of underdogs.
Yeah. I think he was someone's own goal a couple of weeks ago. Might have been mine. I can't remember. But he got one back after getting sent off a couple of weeks ago in his debut. This time he scored the equaliser in injury time for his side in the J2 league. So good on Stefan Mork. It's good to see an Aussie doing well overseas.
If we can have a few other quick mentions, Tommie, for moments of the week, just to get us pumped up.
Yeah, for the vibe.
Melbourne victory women's winning the A-League's women's championship after they scrapped into the finals on goal difference. I think they finished fourth, and they had to beat every team ahead of them to win. So and they also had to play half of their season in a month that was really disrupted. And they've gone back to back as well. So what a moment for them.
Go on the WUC.
And also the Knicks. It was announced, I think, earlier in the week that they're going to get some games finally back in New Zealand. Yeah. So they'll have a bit of a homecoming. I don't know. I haven't seen their fixture, though. I know the latest fixture's been released. So I can look at it now. But how many games they'll get, but just the fact that they're getting back over to New Zealand, their supporters would be pretty stoked to see them, I think.
I suspect it might only be 2 games. It could be 3 in New Zealand that they're going to play. But look, if there's one thing that might be attractive to a lot of A-League fans, it might be an away weekend over in the Tasman. I don't know if there's cheap flights going at the moment, but
I think when the announcement happened, people were looking at it and it didn't look very good. It looks very expensive, but I mean, where there's a will, there's a way, isn't there?
Yeah, true that. All right, let's after pumping us up, let's bring us back down to earth. Colby, have you got an own goal that's not Socceroos related?
Oof. I mean, Eden Hazard, he's going to undergo surgery on his ankle. He's been injured so much since moving to Real Madrid, and there's been a running stat about how many injuries to goals and assists he's got. And I can give you the update that it's 16 injuries to 16 assists since joining Real Madrid. The man is absolutely cooked. Not an own goal because it's just sad. His body's broken down, but what's happening there? He was just a world beater when he left Chelsea, and then he's just completely broken down. It's wild, the change.
It did feel like at the time when he went to Real Madrid, particularly to do with the timing, that Chelsea had timed it really well, because I think he was maybe even 29. He was definitely 28. At least, but and when he arrived there, you sort of thought, oh yeah, and he had that difficult first preseason, and the accusations of him being a little bit overweight and the like. So yeah, it's just been a really difficult time for him. But I mean, if there's a winner out of all that, it's Chelsea. They were just laughing all the way to the bank.
Premier League clubs, right? I guess the own goal, it's not to poor Eden Hazard, because I don't know how much of that is within his control. And, I mean, obviously he's responsible for keeping himself in good condition, but a lot of injuries are, outside of your control. But the own goal there goes to probably Real and Barca just buying Premier League stars that are just at the top of their powers and not really that buying them young like they used to, and just paying overs for them.
Well, and I know Salah's sort of due to come off contract at the end of next season, and there are shades of Salah, I think, with Hazard. And if Real Madrid or Barcelona come in and pay overs for him, considering how much football that man has played over the last 5 years, it would not surprise me at all if he broke down in a very similar way to Hazard. Obviously, we hope he doesn't, but would not surprise me in the least.
I think that's a good shout. And I think the likes of Real and Barca would be looking at him thinking how great would it be to have Salah in our team, but also thinking, oh, gee, what about all these other players? And then they've got the likes of Bale still on their books at Real Madrid, just getting smashed by the Spanish papers, calling him, I think they called him a parasite, and just we're trashing him again. But meanwhile, he's just banging in screamers for Wales. He can clearly still play and turn it on when he wants. But that's a different matter. And I mean, I personally just can't wait to read the autobiography there. I think there's more to that one than we know.
More than meets the eye. All right, mate. Anything else, or is that you just want to keep it at that for this week for your own goal?
Yeah, we'll keep it at that.
All right, fair enough. For me, it quite easily could have been that we're recording on a Wednesday night on hashtag triple header A-League Wednesday, given that I think there's 2 games on now, and I think they've already played a game tonight, so that could have been an own goal, but it's not. My own goal has got to be to do with the 2 games in the African World Cup qualifiers. First of all, you had Nigeria versus Ghana, and Nigeria were expected to make the World Cup, being sort of one of the biggest nations in Africa by population, but also sort of in terms of football and pedigree. And they went into this game, I think it was 0-0 in the first leg against Ghana, ended up finishing 1-1, which meant that Ghana went through on away goals. But basically the Nigerian fans just were absolutely pissed and just ran onto the field, and there was a full-blown pitch invasion, sort of Sydney Swan style. So a little bit different vibe, not quite as happy and as jovial as the SCG, but still pretty ugly scenes. And Carl Anker, I think his name is, one of the athletic journalists. He was at the stadium, and I saw him sort of tweeting that he was pretty worried, and that he was okay, but he was getting out of there pretty quickly, and he may not be able to tweet for a little while until he gets some better Wi-Fi. So pretty grim times. And obviously, I think a lot of people after those incidences in Mexico recently were worried that, geez, I hope it doesn't turn into something like that again. The other one was Egypt versus Senegal. Now, a lot of people would have probably seen this because of the scenes to do with your boy Colby, Mo Salah, with all the lasers, the laser pointers in his eyes. He was taking that penalty. I think everyone on this pod and almost everyone that listens appreciates a little bit of shithousery, but man, that was next level. I mean, his face was just green from all of the laser pointers on there. I've never seen anything like that in my life, right? And I mean, if Salah is going to have an injury that's going to ruin his career, it's probably his eyes now, because man, that dude cannot be seen straight after that game. It was pretty ugly.
It was like he was at a blue light disco or something.
A green light disco
everywhere, or he was at, or he was like in some movie where he's got all of like 100 sniper lasers on him or something like that. But I just I could not believe, like, were they handing them out at the gates or something? Was this where were people getting all these lasers from?
It was like an A-League game where they don't let you win unless if you've got a flare, but at this instance they didn't let you in unless you had a laser pointer. But look, the other one, and this happened pretty early on in the week, it's to do with Graham Arnold. So it's a little bit Socceroos related. And it was to do with his COVID ISO breach, which has probably gone under the radar a little bit with the terrible results and everything else. But it was just one of many distractions in the lead up to, in particular, to the Japan game that just felt really avoidable. And something that was very much within at least Arnie's control. I mean, he ended up copping a $20,000 fine from the FA, which ended up going to a flood charity. So, look, yeah, at least some good came of it, but just a really bizarre situation, and something, like I said, really avoidable, and just wish that it hadn't happened, because it was just one more thing that went wrong in the lead up to the game. And look, that's me for our own goal this week. We both of us had a couple of moments of the week and own goals, so plenty to dissect there. But look, I guess we can't put it off any longer, though. We do have to talk a little bit of Roos and World Cup qualifiers, though. So, as I mentioned before, there was plenty of distractions in the lead up to these 2 games against Japan and Saudi Arabia, and plenty of selection issues as well, with Rogic, Moy, McGree, Taggart, McLaren, Jackson Irvine, Harry Suter, and Nikita Rukovic all being out for a variety of reasons for either one or both of the matches. I mentioned before about Arnie's COVID breach was another unwelcome distraction, but just it started to feel like the stars were really aligning against us in the lead up to this, and we weren't in great form as a side either. but look, let's talk the Japan game first, given that was the one where really we needed a result, and even though it was played a couple of days ago, though. But Colby, look, a bit of a rough night at the office for the Roos, as the qualifying campaign kind of sputtered out to a 2-0 loss, meaning we're certain now to play the other third-placed Asian qualifier, and then should we win that, we'll play the fifth-place CONMEBOL nation. But the Japan game, what did you think was worse, the result or the performance?
I mean, how do you choose? The result was exactly what we didn't want. But the performance, 100%, just way too conservative. We looked scared out there. Gave it to Japan so many times, turned it over so many times, gave them so many chances. They had like 20 shots in this game. And that first half in particular, we were just sitting ducks, and like the fullbacks were sitting back, offered nothing. Ryan Grant looks done as a Socceroo. I don't want to see him in a yellow shirt again. Metcalf, I think that was his debut. He didn't look really up to it, but
hooked at halftime. Yeah,
chalk that up to the occasion. Sure, Stensness, okay, but that wasn't it as well. Our midfield basically non-existent. They were just strolling through and shooting on sight, and we were lucky that it was just 2-0 because it could have been 5.
Mate, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I thought the scoreline flattered us. I thought that 2-0. I remember when they scored in the end, I thought, well, look, it's been coming for a long time. But then when they scored the second one, I was like, well, I'm not at all surprised. And if anything, it was kind of relief when sort of you thought, well, at least it's only 2. Like they've hit the post, twice or 3 times. Matty Ryan just hasn't really been in with a shout of even making a save. It's not like he had a blinder and sort of kept us in it. But
I thought he had a good game,
solid game, and he was probably one of our best. But I mean,
yeah,
I don't think you could make that argument that sort of he kept the score respectable or anything like that. I think he made 1 or 2 good saves, but I'm not sure you can make a case that he was sort of head and shoulders above any other player on the pitch or anything like that. But
the thing with this game is we needed to win. We didn't just need a draw. A draw wouldn't have been good enough. So, but part of me sort of gets being a little bit pragmatic and playing a little bit conservatively and giving them the run around and trying to nick something. But it was like we were reacting. Arnie was reacting to his own team selection when things didn't quite work in the first half, and he had to make some changes earlier than you would want to at halftime. But then we just sat and we sat and we sat and we didn't change anything. Sure, the boys looked a little bit better at halftime. I don't know what he said to them at halftime, but whatever it was, he should have said it to them before the game because it's his job as the manager to get them fired up for the game and get them in the right mentality. And they clearly didn't have the right mentality when they went out there. I know it was a huge game, but they honestly looked like they were shitting themselves. And for at least the first 10 minutes of the game, just like not good enough at all. And we left it to the time that they scored to actually start to try and attack. Like you need to be pushing. Like if it's 0-0 and it's sort of like, I don't know, the 70th minute or something like that, start having a go because there's no difference between a draw and losing at that point. Like we really just need to try and win it.
It did feel like the longer it stays at 0-0, the better chance you've got of sort of nicking a goal on the break or something like that, right? So I can kind of maybe understand a conservative approach, but the way the Japanese were just, like you said a couple of minutes ago, just basically strolling through our midfield and creating chances at will, and it really sort of beggars belief that they weren't able to score in the first half. If anything, the game should have been put to bed by half time, really.
Oh, hit the crossbar, hit the post and the crossbar like a couple of times as well. Like, I mean, any other day, those are goals. It's just, yeah.
And it just kind of, it reminded me of sort of maybe that period pre 2014 World Cup where we got absolutely just wiped out by, I think it was France and Brazil, wasn't it?
France and Brazil 6-0, but back to back. This I've got this on my notes for later on. Like this feels like that.
Yeah, and it was just so it was a really disheartening performance, and like I said, if anything, it felt like the result we just sort of got away with one for it to be only 2-0. So,
but mind you. when we copped those back-to-back 6-0s, we were already automatically qualified.
Yeah.
Give Hogorosic a medal, and that team was a piece of shit. Like, we were automatically qualified at that time, and we were still rubbish. This time we're nowhere near it.
I did see someone on social media today made the point that Ange, and I guess by extension Holger Ozic got that team to the World Cup with like Mackay, Oli Bozanic, and one of the McGowans playing at right back or centre back, and in hindsight, I'd probably take Matty Mackay at the moment to play anywhere in that Socceroos, either midfield or left back or left midfield, anywhere.
I'd put prime Matty Mackay anywhere in that lineup. He would get in.
But just grim times, I guess, in a lot of ways. But look, Colby, were you able to find any positives from the game? What did you think of Bruno? Did you like the selection of Bruno?
I did.
Did you
I know.
like
I mean,
how he was used? That he came on with about, I think, 30 minutes to go.
Shannon and I said this the week before when we were talking about the selection on the pod. I like it. I think we need to choose the best players available to us, and even at 34 years old, he's still up there, particularly given our forward options. So I liked that. I didn't mind how he was introduced. I mean, it's he's a very situational kind of player, as we know. So yeah, I didn't mind that. I think a Bruno if we were struggling against opposition who really wanted to sit in, I think Bruno would be good, and they wanted to, and you could draw fouls and break up the rhythm and that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I don't mind it. I liked him. Rustic, I suppose he was good, and he's that kind of like cocksure player that will lose his head a little bit when he gets frustrated, but he could equally change a game himself. I didn't mind that. I liked Tilio for his little cameo. He looked, he looked pretty decent, pretty bright. He didn't do a slidey boy, but he did do get around 2 or 3 players, which has been played over and over again. I think he's a decent left back. I mean, he just like Ryan Grant, he was clearly under instructions just to sit and not go forward. But the difference is King actually looked decent, whereas Ryan Grant just looked cooked.
It's a bit sad, isn't it, when you see someone sort of them just pull up.
Got the shackles on, speaking.
I don't mean for this match. I mean in general terms, how Grant just seems to have pulled up kind of thing in the last sort of 12 to 18 months. Like he's played a lot of football. Well, you can make a case that he's played a lot of football, but I don't know whether it's just he's hit a point in his career where physically he's starting to lose some of that ability to get up and down the pitch, which has made him such an asset for Sydney and the Socceroos over the last couple of years.
I don't know whether there might be even any long COVID there, because since he came back from COVID, he hasn't been great either. Since he shaved the mullet, I don't know. You tell me what came first, but whatever the case is, I think we've got better options.
It's a very valid point, I think, about long COVID, and it's something that we're probably underappreciating just as fans, I guess, from a very broad perspective, that some players probably aren't quite back to 100% after getting COVID. Sort of, and obviously, it also depends when they got COVID in respect to, I guess, their vaccinations as well. But look, the other game that the Roos played was this morning against Saudi Arabia, 5 a.m. kickoff, Australian Eastern Daylight. Colby, how much did this match matter? Did it matter at all?
No, it didn't matter. It just absolutely did not matter. And you can't convince me that it did. You can talk about momentum going into the playoffs, in June or July or whenever it is. No. It did not matter at all. We were third place. We were never going to go any better than that. It was purely for professional and national pride that we were playing in it. So no, it's
and look, also it was an opportunity for Arnold tried some new players or some players in different positions. For example, Stensness played at centre back after letting Degenek and Grant, they went back to their respective club teams because they're on yellow cards and decided not to risk them, which, I mean, that's probably not a reasonable tactic to employ, and especially Stensness. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that are probably surprised to see him in the squad, let alone starting both of these matches. So, look, I think he will benefit enormously from that experience. Whether or not he's going to be a mainstay of the Socceroos over the next sort of 5 years remains to be seen. But obviously, he's still got a fair bit of development to come up his sleeve if he wants to do that. But it was a tricky game, and I guess, to be perfectly honest, I found myself this morning watching this game and feeling far more relaxed about it than the previous game against Japan, because I knew there was nothing riding on it. I thought, well, I can just watch the Socceroos. I can look at individual performances. I can look at individual moments, and look, maybe we'll get a result, maybe we won't. But if anything, it kind of reminded me a little bit of watching some of those. Sort of before we joined Asia, where you just play heaps of friendlies against a bunch of random teams, and there was nothing riding on any of these games. So often you were just playing, was it like Jamaica or like England, and you were sort of, you were playing for national pride, but you were just playing a game. The Socceroos were just playing, and it kind of felt a little bit like that this morning, which was a pretty bizarre
Good
scenario.
and bad,
yeah, exactly. Aaron Camilleri asks, who or what does Robbie Slater blame for the latest Roos result?
Who knows? Like, can he blame Ange for this? He'd probably find a way. Just loves Arnie and will just defend him to the death. It's just bloody bizarre.
What I did find very curious today was that Robbie Slater was in fine form on social media today. Just seemed like he was up for a beef. And one person that he did seem to really just sort of take a bit of a liking to, or whatever the opposite of that was Vince Rigari. He and Vince were just at each other's throats today, which was, I don't know if that means that Vince has gone like top tier soccer Twitter media or what that means, but still, it was a pretty bizarre moment in one of many of the bizarre moments that Robbie Slater's had on in social media and regular.
Sort of like soccer Twitter's champion, just to fight these sort of higher level battles.
Oh wow. Mate, similar to the Japan game, was there any positives you were able to draw from this game?
Well, I only saw the extended highlights because, I did not get up and watch this game at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. as it would have been here in Queensland. So
even worse. Fair point.
Exactly, but no way, guys. If we had to, if we were a chance at qualifying, you bet I would have been up and watching every second. But I've been let down. I've been let down by the boys. So no, but from what I saw, it was good to see Atkinson get a start at right back. Like, the boys looked like they created some chances with the current squad, and given how disjointed I'd say the squad has been in terms of the rotating injuries, COVID, not only during this camp, I guess, but in the other camps as well. Like, it was good to see, even after, even just in the second game, there was a bit more fluidity in that front line, like with Mobile and Boyle. Rustich, they looked to be a little bit more in sync in this game, but maybe also that was a result of us just like pushing forward a lot more and being allowed to sort of go and attack. So I don't know what was the cause there, but that looked positive.
Yeah, it was. I mentioned before how it felt easier to sort of relax and watch this game, but I think similar to the Japan game, it didn't feel like there was many positives to draw. I think I mentioned before Stensness. I thought he had a pretty decent game without sort of shining or excelling, but a decent game against Saudi Arabia for the Socceroos in what is your second or maybe third appearance for the Roos is probably a pretty decent outcome, I think, for him. And Tilio as well. There was one particular ball where he really showed his quality, where I think he played Boyle or Hrustic through, so that was good as well. And I guess if there was one player who looked most comfortable in the two games, it was probably Tilio, which is maybe a little bit concerning. Maybe we can be a little bit excited about that for the future, that already he seems ready to be playing maybe more regularly for the Socceroos, or coming off the bench regularly for the Roos. I guess that's goodness, if nothing else. But yeah, it was not a great performance again, I guess, through the middle. Jeggo obviously giving away the penalty, which was probably the depths of that midfield performance, I guess. But again, another pretty grim result and performance, I guess, for the Roos.
Yeah, like I mean, the way we started that campaign, and I know you'll want to get on and talk about the sort of campaign and what's next and stuff like that. But like, we started with 11 wins in a row, and then we've had 1 win in our last 7. Like that's the story.
Yeah, mate. And look, you've given away half of one of my stats at the moment, or at least sort of talking detail about some of the form. So, Darren Thomas, he pointed out on Twitter today that we've had 1 win in our past 7 World Cup qualifiers. We've given away leads 3 times in total against China and Oman. He said he's always liked Arnie, but this campaign he's shown he's a good domestic manager and just not up to it at international level. And to be perfectly honest, I've kind of got to agree with that final part where I think after the Asian Cup, I think it was 2007, I wrote him off. I thought, nah, this guy's cooked. I can't stand him, or I was just really off of him, right? And then obviously he did just amazing things at the Mariners in Sydney, and that changed my mind. I thought, oh, maybe he's learned, he's grown, but I think we've seen in this campaign, even after a good start, that maybe international football, or at least for the Roos, it's not quite for him. And I think Arnie will probably go back to the A League or maybe to the J League or something like that, and he'll probably be a success. But maybe the timing of who's in the squad and just sort of the timing of how things have played out in this campaign just haven't shown his best. But yeah, I think I'd be very, very surprised if Arnie lasts much longer, I guess, for the Roos, or gets another crack at the Roos, given that he's already had 2 goes at it. Colby, like you were saying though, let's talk sort of what's next. I mentioned before about we'll play the team that finished 3rd in the other group, and that looked like that could have been either Iraq or the UAE. Iraq were trailing the UAE and had a fantastic opportunity to overtake them. Iraq playing Syria overnight, and the UAE playing the already qualified and Asian mega nation Korea. But as it turned out, Syria and Iraq drew 1-1, while the UAE beat Korea. So it means that UAE finished 3rd, and it means that we're going to be playing them. I think it's the 7th of June. So still another 3 months to go until that game. And then assuming we're able to get past the UAE, and given that they beat us in the most recent Asian Cup, that's not a foregone conclusion. But if we're able to get past the UAE, we'll play Peru, who are the team that finished 5th in the Asian in the CONMEBOL World Cup qualifiers. So,
and who smashed us in the World Cup recently.
and look, I guess to some degree, Peru actually have a little bit in common with Australia, but more in common with the Saudis. Both the Peruvians and the Saudis almost have an entirely domestic squad, and have managed to sort of build a team that's greater than the sum of its parts, and basically the opposite of us at the moment, where we're not greater than the sum of our parts, and we're sort of struggling with our domestic league at the moment. So going to be very interesting, I guess, to see how we go against the UAE and possibly against Peru. But look, putting aside all of that negativity, all of that pessimism of the last sort of week or so, Colby, what do you think our chances are against the UAE?
I'm not putting aside my negativity. I think our chances are extremely low. If we get past the UAE, I'm very pessimistic about our chances of beating Peru. And they're 2 one-off playoffs, didn't you say? They're both one-legged games. Where will they be played? Do we know?
Both of them are in Doha, in Qatar.
Well, I mean, the good thing about that is that it's not in South America, I guess, for Peru. So I mean, that's a huge positive. I think I give us a boxer's chance on neutral grounds. If it was in South America, I would say no fucking chance. But look, yeah, I'm not confident about either of those.
I agree massively with you on that point that a single-legged playoff in either of those matches actually plays in our favour. I think whether it's the UAE or Peru, if it goes the full 90 minutes or even into extra time, I think that will go in our favour. the fact that it's just a one-off and you get a little bit of an extra boost of adrenaline. Sort of, it feels like the second leg of the tie. It's all going to be over, one and done in the one game. So I think that benefits us. The UAE, I think, are probably coming off a little bit of a high. I think Abdul Rahman, I think he's sort of reached the peak of his career, and he's probably not quite the player that he once was a couple of years ago, where he was sort of talked about as one of the best players in Asia, and it was sort of boggled the mind of a lot of pundits that he hadn't gone to Europe yet or at all. So I think we have a decent chance against the UAE, but I guess it could actually turn out that everyone writing off the Socceroos turns out to be actually a bit of a blessing in disguise. You take all of the pressure off. No one believes we can do it. And if there's one thing that Australian sporting teams enjoy, it's being the underdog, right? And so that could actually be something that sort of goes in their favour. And whether it's Arnie or someone else, sort of having that sort of siege mentality of, oh, no one believes in us, everyone's written us off. That's a team talk right there, right? So it could turn out to be goodness for the boys.
Well, I mean, there's going to need to be something that happens to get us through. Like the feeling that I have now, and I don't know whether I'm alone in this, but you know, when we had to go through the playoffs in 2018, that was pretty grim. But I always felt that we could go through. I believed that we could beat the opposition that was in front of us.
I believe that we can win.
I believe that we could win. But here, I'm just, yeah, like I was saying before, I feel like I did about the Roos back in 2013 after those 6-0 losses. Like, I feel pretty much the lowest about the team that I have since then. Like, I don't believe that we could beat too many people at the moment.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, I think the only thing we haven't really discussed yet, which is, and I've sort of alluded to a little bit, it's Arnie's fate. And do you think Arnie? Okay, two-part question. They're very much along the same lines. Do you think Arnie will be the one that will take us to the playoffs? And should Arnie be the one that takes us to the playoffs?
Yeah, good to separate that into two questions. I think that he will be the one to take us into the playoffs, and I guess, should he be the one to take us to the playoffs? I mean, I'm pretty neutral on this because I just think, well, we already are where we are. Like, what's the difference to me? Like, I mean, I just don't know.
Hail Mary, doesn't it? Like,
yeah, I don't know how much of a difference could a real pinch hitter come in and make. I honestly don't know. Like, if it's a big difference, if somehow we can get someone who's just an absolute specialist, gun for hire, but I just, like, who even is that? Like, I just don't think this kind of thing's realistic. I think Arnie should be sacked when we're no longer able to qualify. Like, it just seems too late for anything to make a meaningful difference given the squad we've got available and where things are.
It seems like it's going to be in true more than a game fashion that there could even be an announcement made about this in the next sort of 24 to 48 hours. So given that this is Wednesday night, then we're recording by Thursday night, by the time we actually get the pod up, there could be a decision made about what's going to happen with Arnie and the coaching position for the next 2 months. So
new contract.
Oh my goodness. Can you imagine the meltdown? Oh my Lord. But look, I guess like you mentioned about sort of the hired guns. There's no one really that stands out. I mean, I know some people have talked about Bielsa, right? But he's a system guy. He needs probably half a campaign.
He'd be wasted. He'd be wasted on a one-off game or two. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, really, I think it's going to be like Van Marwijk or something like that again. Who?
Yeah. Look how that got us. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. And so I guess I sense that I don't think Arnie deserves the opportunity to take us to the playoffs because I think we've been fucking average for the last, what would we say, 7 games, I think. And even towards the back end of some of that 11-game winning streak, I thought we weren't always as good as we were making ourselves out to be. But
I think he deserves the opportunity to dig his own grave. Like, I don't want to give him the excuse of, oh well, I was hooked, I could have got us there. Like go and finish what you started, Arnie,
I
and
think
never come back.
I agree with those sentiments, but I think the massive concern that Football Australia have is that the World Cup qualification is such a massive cash cow. I mean, it practically funds everything else that they do. And so it's a massive concern for them that they could go without. I think it's something in the region of, I don't know, $15 to $20 million or something. And we only get it once every 4 years. And so you miss out on that. And it's going to mean, Futsal Roos are disbanded once again. And a bunch of other things just aren't really going to go over the line. And it means that there's going to be a lot of things that will go unfunded for the next couple of years.
And maybe that's where maybe that's where Australian football fans should be directing some of their anger. Like, Arnie's an easy scapegoat, and he has not covered himself in glory. And, you know, I'm not his biggest fan either. And, you know, like, he wouldn't be my first choice at all. But, like, what are Football Australia doing? You know, the fish rots from the head, and it's, you know, Arnie's not the head. Like, they're the ones that set the structure and do all of those other things, you know, and have been responsible for a lot of the elements of our game in the past decade or so that people are talking about. Like, sure, you know, the A-League clubs now have more of a hands-on responsibility for developing players, but, you know, and we're in this new independent situation as of last year or the year before or whenever it kicked in. But really, like, they're the ones that have created this mess. The structure is nowhere near what it needed to be, and we're seeing the fruits of that now. Like, who have we got? Like Rustic playing for Frankfurt and Matty Ryan playing for Real Sociedad, and both of those, I don't know if both of them are playing regular. Like, a question for you,
Rustic, I think is keep going.
Question for you, Tommy: who are going to be our next players that are going to be playing regularly in a top league or even a second tier league?
Yeah, that's
who do you see? Who's in the pipeline? Who's coming? Like, you've got Sutar, who's 23.
Who is coming off a massive knee injury.
But yeah, how's he going to be when he comes back? Irvine, Sampali, like, yeah, if they get promoted, I guess by default, but will he be playing regularly, or will that, you know, will Sampali replace him? Like, I don't know. Like, maybe Tilio, ? But is that's a big stretch. And then you're down into the talking about people like Jonro and Stensness. Like, that's it. Like, who else is there? Like, you know, anyone listening, any of the listeners, like, at me if I've missed anyone, but like, I just don't see where this next generation's coming from.
And I think those concerns are pretty well founded, because I think if you look at the best teams in the last few years in the A-League, they've been largely Australian support cast and foreigners who've sort of taken up all the limelight, right? Like, even this current Melbourne City side, right, that are so good. They're so good because, they've got Jamie McLaren up top, sort of getting all the goals for them, but it's still largely a foreign midfield who are sort of trying to dominate these games and hold possession with Luna and Berenguer, and that's not quality or ability that we have in the Australian ranks either. And I think that was something that Arnie really struggled with, in the fact that it was only against really those sort of second and third tier Asian teams that were able to really dominate midfield. And when you don't have like what's his name, Merzaevsky or a Ninkovic who you can rely on to hold onto the ball and to dominate possession, things become really challenging, especially against, like, when you're playing against the likes of Japan, who have got like 10 players all playing in sort of first and second tier European leagues, sort of week in, week out. Becomes very, very difficult. But it's to go back to your original point about Football Australia. James Johnson, he has been. Has anyone seen the man for the last maybe 6 months? I mean, in some ways it's good, right? He shouldn't be on the news sort of every second day or once a week or something like that. He should be working shit in the background, doing commercial deals, sort of setting up.
Yeah, and like I said, I know that like the disconnects happened, and, you know, we've got an independent A-League now, and the FA aren't as responsible for all of this stuff. But like, they really did set a lot of this up. And I should also say, like, I don't see who we've got now, who the generation are coming through now. So that doesn't bode well for the next cycle, I suppose. But fuck off. But like, I am hopeful, and I've said this on the pod before. I'm hopeful about the generation after that. Like, I'm hopeful about the kind of talent that we're producing from the academies. But I just think, again, we're in a situation where there's a big gap, and we shouldn't be in that situation. Like, we were in that situation when the AIS stopped being the talent factory for young players, and then they all got farmed out overseas when we didn't really have the A-League and stuff like that. And we had a big gap, and we saw that in the lack of qualification for Olympics. The Olyroos, they went through a qualification drought. We saw that. But now, like, I don't know, maybe I'm just feeling pessimistic, but I'm almost seeing that again. I just don't see who are those players who are in their early 20s now who we think are going to be there in, like, let's say, the 2026 World Cup.
No, I think it's a pretty reasonable shout, and I think it's a fear that a lot of Australian football fans hold at the moment. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see and find out, though. Mate, one final thing before we move on to the A-League, though, and this isn't necessarily ground that we have to cover, but it's ground that I want to cover anyway because I think it's a great question. Kazanaki asks, who has had more losses in Asia, the US military or Arnie?
Oh, Jesus.
Both don't have a good record against golf teams, golf nations.
They don't. But I mean, it's got to be Arnie. Like, at least the US military can hold a position.
All right. Next up, we're going to talk a little bit A-League, though. So, obviously, full round of A-League played over the weekend, despite all of the Socceroos being away with the World Cup qualifiers. We'll go through the game shortly, but first up, we're going to cover our A-League anti-power rankings. Colby, who's up in your power rankings this week?
Tommie, I can't help but look at your very helpful notes for this again, and I agree with some of your items on the cheat sheet here. Actually, most of them. Central Coast Mariners, 3 wins, 2 draws in their past 5. Yep. I mean, they looked the goods against Adelaide. I know, the red card helped them, but they're banging on the door before that. We'll talk about a little bit more about that game after. Jets, definitely agree with that. And I said a couple of weeks ago on the pod that I think they turned a corner with that result.
Newcastle owners back.
Oh, Papa's ball, give it to me. But I think they did, and I think it was with Shannon actually, and he said no, he thinks they're going to be inconsistent, but I think they looked the real deal, and we saw that in the Sydney game when they had a pretty weakened squad and still they performed. I think Papa's has got something good going on there.
Interesting. Mate, anything else or any other team that you're liking that's on the way up?
Well, I can see you've also you've mentioned the Knicks in the mixer, and I can see that they're up 3-0 against the Raw right now. Not great considering. Well, firstly, I'm a Raw fan, and secondly, I tipped the Raw, which I shouldn't have done. So this is just not great for me. But the Knicks, that a little bit inconsistent results, but again, I think they've got something there. Even when they lose, I'm still kind of convinced by them. I'm still like, well, they lost, but this didn't go their way, and I still think they're just a solid team this season. Even though they've had injuries, even though they've been playing away, and the results haven't always been there, they're just a solid team, and they're fourth. So
man, a stat that could blow your mind. So obviously we know it's been a wild season. Different teams played different number of games, right? With this win, Wellington go up to 4th. They're on 27 points after 17 games. Now they've got 4 matches in hand against Melbourne, compared to Melbourne City, who are top. If they manage to win all 4 games, they could be just 1 point behind Melbourne City in top of the league, which does sort of boggle the mind a little bit. And I know, look, points on the board is always better than games in hand. We've talked about that a few times on the pod, but still, it shows how this A-League season is still incredibly close. And the table isn't maybe necessarily showing how close things just are.
The only consistent teams look like City and the Woo.
Yeah, great shout. And I mean, even at the beginning of the season, everyone thought, "Oh, yeah, the Vuck are they're gonna go top two or close." And they
I
started out
did.
the season really well, but they've faded and shown their inconsistency. Or if anything,
That
they're really consistent in 4 draws on the trot. So
That's an interesting one, isn't it? Because, like, yeah, okay, like this week and last week, they've had some players out with the ruse, sure. But like, I was expecting more consistency given Popper, and I think people are going to be talking about that soon. Like, where's the Popper effect that we saw at Perth and that we saw at Western Sydney? And we were expecting at the Victory, and especially given the quality of players that they've brought in, and their squad is quality on paper. So where's the Popper effect?
mate, I think it's all very relative though, isn't it? Like this is the same Melbourne Victory who finished dead last and were terrible last season, right? So just the fact that they're up straight into finals and are nowhere, like they look like they're. I think they're probably going to comfortably finish in finals contention. So that's still a massive improvement upon last year. And I mean, he's
Yeah, but the man
revamped that
took
squad.
Perth Glory to a grand final. Come on, like if he could do that with Perth, what's he? The Victory, they've got to be right up there.
Yeah, right. Fair enough. Look, mate. Now that we're talking about Melbourne Victory, they were one of my teams that was on the slide as far as my power rankings go. As I mentioned before, 4 consecutive draws. Strangely enough, though, they're unbeaten in their last 5, though, which I think is like a weird stat. And with the results from tonight, the way that they're sitting, the Vuck are in 6th. So still got a couple of games in hand, but it looks like I was saying before, it looks like they're still a solid chance to play finals. Is there anyone else that you want to talk about in terms of the on the slide in your power rankings, Colby?
Well, I don't think there's anyone who it's not already obvious. Like it's obvious to say Western Sydney, Brisbane, or Perth. Like that's just stating the bleeding obvious. But the sort of smoky one that you could say is Sydney. Like I've defended them before when their fans in particular were having a cry about their form and a few dodgy results. But actually, like they've drawn again with Macarthur tonight. We didn't see that game because we're recording the pod, so I don't know what that was all about. But obviously, they lost 2-0 to the Jets, but maybe that says more about the Jets than it does about them, given their outs for ruse qualifiers. But I don't know, really, are they that depleted though? So yeah, I think you could argue that Sydney are back on the slide.
Yeah, I think not necessarily the them being on the slide, but I think the challenge for Sydney is going to be that they've still got to fit the rest of their A-League games in before they go away to the Asian Champions League in what is it, 2 weeks time they go away. So they're going to be jamming a lot of football in, and even if they do manage to make finals, I think they're going to be totally gassed after 6 games in 2 weeks in the heat. I'm pretty sure they're in Bangkok as well in Thailand. So they're going to be cooked. There's no way they're making it past the first week of finals, I think, assuming they even make it. So, yeah, I think pretty much you can write off the rest of the season, I think, as far as Sydney are concerned. We mentioned about how they're playing right now, and I think that game is literally just about to finish up. And Sydney actually have come back from 2-0 down against Macarthur, which is probably a pretty decent result, but maybe it says more about Macarthur than it does about Sydney. In terms of the game specifically, Melbourne Victory, they hosted the Wanderers on Sunday, the final match of the round, excluding tonight's games, obviously. The Vuck just absolutely dominated this game, just couldn't find a breakthrough, though. They had centre-back Miranda sent off for a shocking 2-footed challenge, although you could probably make a pretty decent case that he didn't mean it to be a 2-footed challenge. It was just sort of one of those ones where the second leg kind of comes around at the last minute after sort of he lost a little bit of control in the tackle. But Jason Davidson, he scored in injury time and looked like he'd short up all 3 points for the Vuck. But the Wanderers were handed a very late reprieve as 2 Victory defenders got in each other's way and then managed to handball inside their penalty area. Steven Ugarkovic converted the resulting penalty, but my goodness, that was an absolute debacle that they managed to just throw away those 3 points. I think the Vuck would be very, very disappointed. If there was one person who did seem very happy about it, though, it was Mark Rudan. He was very pumped at full time about this. I think he might have even got stuck into the crowd a little bit. Just yeah.
That's shithousery. That is shithousery in its purest form.
And look, like I think we like Mark Rudin getting involved in the game in that sort of way. Obviously, he doesn't always come with, let's say he comes with a little bit of baggage sometimes. But look, as a coach, sometimes he can get results, and that's one way I guess that he can be a positive force to the league is getting involved with the fans sort of at game day like that.
Getting involved with the fans is okay. Getting involved with presenters following them around, not okay.
Not okay with following around fans on social media. Not okay.
Not okay. Using burners, questionable.
Central Coast, they played Adelaide on Saturday night. A massive 3-0 win for the Mariners, who look to be in a pretty decent run of form at the moment. This game was really dominated by the Joe Gauci red card early on, which enabled the Mariners just to pepper the Adelaide goal when Adelaide only had 10 men. It did take until the 77th minute for Marco Arena to break the deadlock, and then the Mariners scored twice more in injury time. They did manage to even up the numbers on the field though, with Maresh getting sent off. I thought it was a straight red card, just going off of the highlights, but it looks like I think it was a second yellow. Is that your understanding as well?
Yeah, I think it was a second yellow, but it was because of an intentional handball. They were saying on the comms. I was really confused by this one.
It looked like, one of those fouls where, one of those moments where a player's been fouled, or they think they've been fouled, so they jump on the ball to sort of force the referee's hand. And I think if there's, it's pretty easy to give a lot of referees sort of stick because you disagree with their decisions. But if there's one thing that has changed for the better in the last few years, it's that referees have sort of clamped down on this sort of behaviour. And now if it is a bit of a 50-50 call, I think they're more likely to actually call it as a handball, which I think is goodness, because it's basically cheating to force the referee's hand. But yeah, great result for the Mariners, and I think Adelaide be a bit disappointed as well with that result, even if it was against when they had 10 men against 11.
The Mariners looked like they were all over them, even with 11v11 though, and the Cumdog and Arena, like, they look like they're getting some good chemistry going. Cumdog broke his scoring drought. Arena with a great goal. They just look like they're clicking.
Yeah, and I got to say, when the Cumdog arrived, and I thought, this is a real shame, because it looked like Maresh and Arena were actually forming a good partnership, developing a bit of understanding. But Maresh can't really get into the team at the moment, and I'm sure getting sent off as well isn't going to help either. But it's also 3 games now without a win for Adelaide after they were looking the goods not that long ago too. So they're still in third, Adelaide, but they need to pick up some more points if they're going to stay there. Macarthur, they played Melbourne City in a game that I've already talked about after the assistant unsheathed himself midway through the game. Understrength Melbourne City side, missing Nuno Reis, Connor Metcalf, Scott Jamieson, welcome back Jamie McLaren and Matthew Leckie from Socceroos duty and injury, respectively, to see off the McBulls in the rain. None other than Jamie McLaren got the goal to separate the two teams, but it wasn't all smooth sailing for City as they looked pretty disjointed and pretty bloody average in the first half. But I thought Paddy Kisnorbo did a pretty solid job as manager in making those 2 subs at halftime, with Leckie coming on for Raphael and Jordan Hall coming on for Kieran Stokes, which allowed for a more functional back 4 and also front 3 for City. So that was good for them. The McBulls were also missing Mariappa, who was away on international duty for Jamaica. So I still don't understand how MacArthur signed a current Jamaican international and a guy who I think only 18 months ago was playing in the Premier League, or 2 years ago was playing in the Premier League. Just completely gone under the radar how that's all happened. And I'm still yet to hear a valid justification for why we have an ex-Premier League player playing for the McBulls. But anyway, Brisbane, they hosted Western United. Really fun game here between Premier's Plate chasing the Woo and the Wooden Spoon chasing Raw. Raw opened the scoring after just 3 minutes, but Raw goalkeeper Jordan Holmes was sent off just after 30 minutes. Raw might have felt like they could have held on to the league, but to the lead, sorry, but that lasted just 5 minutes before Adisu Bayou equalised. 2 more Woo goals later, and it appeared as though Woo were cruising to a win, but a late Raw goal made things slightly interesting. Another really strong result for the Woo, who continue to pull out the results, and arguably, like you said before, Colby, they're looking like one of only 2 consistent teams in the league at the moment.
Tommie, I didn't watch this game live, but the Holmes, so I didn't see the reaction to it on social media, but like for mine, that Holmes sending off, come on. One, query the contact. 2, was he even the last man? I think Scott Neville looked like he was in line. 3,
Ooh.
Wales intentionally left his leg trailing there, and you can see Holmes pulling out like 3 or 4 paces before he even gets there. This is just like an absolute farce.
Mate, I got to say, I can sympathise with you a little bit over this. I think Holmes is probably, I think he probably could have done more to avoid the contact, and it's definitely one of those ones where the attacking player has played for the contact, made sure that he's got it by sort of trailing a leg or something like that.
And the keeper was trying to pull out as well, like way before he got there. No way for me. Never a sending off.
So I do sympathise a little bit with you there, but it was one of those ones where, because there was even the smallest amount of contact was made, it did sort of seem like the referee felt like he had no other option other than to send him off. But I tell you what, if your frustration, I think, was matched by Jordan Holmes. He looked like he was about ready to level someone after he
almost like knocked Dylan Wenzel Hall's head off in the argy-bargy that ensued.
I mean, he might have wanted to do that anyway, even if he wasn't going to get red carded, right? I don't know, he's an ex-Raw player, Dylan Wenzel Hall, so maybe it might have been on the cards anyway. But yeah, it was. It felt like a moment where you thought, "Oh, geez, is this going to boil over? Could this get really ugly for Jordan Holmes?" And fortunately, it didn't. But yes.
Bit of an own goal though for my boy Macklin Freak, who didn't cover himself in glory, letting in 3 goals after sort of being able to come in. You know, he's been pipped for the number 1 position by Holmes, and then great, Holmes gets red card, so he's got at least a game and a half to get himself in there. And then he lets in 3 goals, and one of them in particular, that Prijovic goal, where he just the header just loops over him, and he's just looks rooted to the spot. I don't know. I feel like he looked like he could have done a bit more with that. And then tonight, as we've been watching, he's let in 3 against the Knicks. So
at home,
didn't see any of those goals, but like, you know, in your 2 games, game and a half to impress, you've let in 6 goals.
Not great.
Yeah, I think he's going to be back on the bench the following week, unfortunately.
Speaking of the Knicks, they scored another 2 goals against Perth on Saturday night. This one, I think, was at Leichhardt from memory. Perth's first game after Richie Garcia was sacked. Didn't exactly go to plan, as they lost the reduced distance derby 2-1. It looked like the game would finish 1-1 after Ben Wayne and M-Tag favourite Nick Fitz got the goals for their respective teams.
Ben Wayne, though, what a goal. What a volley.
Yeah, that was a great goal, I thought. But it was Nick Pennington who got the winner deep into injury time. Pretty decent little finish there for Nick Pennington, who I don't think scores.
And what a moment.
Goals, might add. Yeah,
the team spirit there as well. After that, you can see what it meant to them to get that.
Well, as well, and like this is the 2 teams who've played on the road basically constantly due to COVID over the last 2 years or 12 months, and so you can really tell that one team has a great team spirit and a great togetherness, and has really come together as a result of this whole experience, and one that just hasn't. So
the skin on the Wellington Phoenix and the resilience that they've built and that team spirit that you said, it's just absolutely staggering. Mentality monsters, because, you know, they don't have that home crowd support that many teams just rely on to get them over the line in these matches, and they've just managed to do it time after time. fueled by nothing but their own team spirit.
Ufuk Talay to take the Roos to the World Cup qualifying playoffs.
They could do worse.
In this one as well, Aussie Malik got sent off, and sort of similar to the Brisbane game just before we were talking about Colby. Could maybe make a case that it's a little bit harsh. This red card, it wasn't. I still didn't think it was super obvious that it was actually a red card offence or anything like that. I'm not sure if he just sort of inadvertently made contact with him as he fell over or what the situation was, but it was clumsy if nothing else. And look, at Aussie Malik didn't seem to complain a hell of a lot after the red card was shown. He just basically walked off, and maybe that was due to frustration, or maybe he's just one of those kind of guys that just when he gets red card just doesn't blow up because he knows there's no point making a song and dance about it. But I'm sure that's not going to do his selection chances much good at Perth either. With just a few more games to go left in the season. And finally, and probably one of the most significant, not necessarily results, but games that I want to talk about was Newcastle versus Sydney, this one on Friday night. This game, like I said, wasn't necessarily a match of interest maybe to a lot of fans, maybe just to Newcastle and Sydney fans, but it took on a whole new level of interest when just prior to the match, the Jets and the APL announced that the Jets were missing a number of players due to COVID. And in fact, the Jets looked like they were going to be unable to field a reserve goalkeeper because all of their other goalkeepers were out sick or injured. So they were basically scouring the NPL up in Newcastle for another player to join them on the day, basically, which is real sort of Sunday league or even midweek futsal areas, right, where you're just desperate for anyone to play. Just, hey, do you know a mate? Kind of areas. But look, the other massive thing that came out of this was that the Jets, the APL announced that due to Sydney and City being unable to replay fixtures, and with finals not that far away, it means that basically if a team's unable to field a team from now on or is massively affected by COVID, games won't be postponed, they won't be cancelled, there'll just be no result and there will be no points awarded for that particular fixture. So it looked like this game was headed for that. And I think had those rules not been in place, I think this game would have been postponed. But look, fair play to the Jets for sticking around and putting out a team, and they did bloody well and end up getting the 2-0 win against Sydney. So who look aren't having the best of seasons compared to recent years, but still the Jets have been pretty inconsistent themselves, so they'd be very happy with that result. And like we said just before, obviously that means that the Jets, they've got 2 wins in a row. First time, I think, for quite a while that they've been able to do that, and are still within a shout of making finals as well, possibly at Sydney's expense. So good on Newcastle owner. But look, that pretty much wraps things up for the pod this week. I don't think there's anything Colby wanted to go through before we wrap up. So look, thanks for joining us this week. I hope you've enjoyed the pod. Hopefully we haven't been too much of a downer for you. Maybe if you're already having a bad week, maybe listening to us wasn't necessarily going to improve your week a hell of a lot. But look, we've enjoyed having you with us, and looking forward to plenty more football chat next week on the pod.